I was 18 when I fell for the gay farmer. When I turned 18, I thought I had my entire life figured out. College, career, the endless race toward some invisible future. That was the plan. Love wasn't supposed to be part of the story, and certainly not the kind of love that would turn my entire world upside down. But everything changed the summer I spent working on a farm far from home. There, in the wide open fields under the blinding sun, I met him. Rugged, kind, and openly, unapologetically himself. A man who didn't just challenge everything I thought I knew about life. He challenged everything I thought I knew about myself. This is the story of how falling in love at 18 didn't just change my heart. It changed the way I see the world. Forever. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. It's the best way to help us keep bringing real, emotional stories like this one straight to you. Stories that might just inspire you to see your own life a little differently. Now let's begin. I never thought a single summer could change a person's life. But looking back now, it's obvious that everything shifted the moment I stepped onto that dusty farm road. I had just turned 18 a few weeks earlier. High school was officially behind me, and my parents, worried that I'd waste my summer sleeping until noon, had convinced me to take a seasonal job before college started. Their friend, Mr. Dalton, owned a farm a few hours outside of town and was looking for extra help during harvest season. I didn't know a single thing about farming, but I figured it was temporary. Easy money, something to pass the time. What I didn't expect was him. His name was Ryan. I learned that almost immediately because he was the first person I met when I arrived. And because the way he said, "Welcome to hell, city boy," with a crooked smile, made it impossible to forget him. Ryan was nothing like anyone I had ever met. He was in his late 20s, probably about 28 if I had to guess, with a strong build, sun-bleached hair that curled slightly under his baseball cap, and skin tanned deep from the sun. There was something rugged and grounded about him, like he belonged to the earth he worked on. I didn't know he was gay the first day. That part came later. But even without knowing, I felt something shift inside me the second I met him, a ripple of awareness, a pull I couldn't explain. "You ever drive a tractor?" he asked, squinting at me like he already knew the answer. "No," I admitted. "You ever even seen a tractor?" I laughed awkwardly. "Once, on TV." Ryan shook his head, chuckling. "You're gonna have a long summer, kid." He clapped me on the back, hard enough to make me stumble forward, and then turned, walking toward the barn, expecting me to follow. And, like an idiot, I did. The first week was brutal. I blistered my hands, sunburned my neck, and fell off a hay bale so hard I thought I'd cracked a rib. Ryan teased me mercilessly, but never cruelly. He showed me how to fix a broken fence, how to coax a stubborn calf back into its pen, how to read the sky for storms. And slowly, somewhere between the scraped knees and the aching muscles, I started to look forward to seeing him. I started to linger a little longer when he smiled, laugh a little louder when he joked, feel my stomach flip whenever he casually ruffled my hair in passing. I told myself it was just admiration. Hero worship, maybe. Nothing more. I didn't have a name yet for what was blooming inside me, soft and confusing and fierce all at once. One evening, after a long day of stacking bales, we sat on the back of the truck, drinking cold sodas and watching the sunset melt into the fields. Ryan pulled off his cap, wiping sweat from his forehead, and leaned back with a sigh. "You're tougher than you look," he said. I smiled, feeling stupidly proud. "You're not so scary once you stop yelling." He chuckled, tossing his cap onto the dashboard. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that felt full full of things unspoken, of questions neither of us knew how to ask yet. I wanted to say something, anything. Tell him that he made my chest feel too tight sometimes, that the sound of his laugh made something inside me ache. But I was 18 and terrified. So instead I said, "Thanks for not firing me yet." Ryan looked over, his blue eyes catching the last gold rays of the sun. For a second, his face softened into something I hadn't seen before, something gentler, sadder. "Wouldn't dream of it," he said in a tone so low I barely caught it. And just like that, something unspoken passed between us, something I didn't have the courage yet to name. That night, lying in the small guest room they'd given me, staring at the cracked ceiling, I felt a restlessness under my skin I couldn't shake. I wanted to be near him, more than near. And for the first time, I let myself wonder what would happen if I stopped pretending I didn't feel it. What would happen if I dared to get closer? The next few days passed in a haze of heat and dust. Every morning, before the sun even broke the horizon, Ryan would bang on the side of my window with the flat of his hand, shouting, "Up and at 'em, city boy!" And every morning I'd stumble out of bed half asleep, cursing him under my breath and grinning like a fool. Working beside him got easier. Not because the work itself softened, but because I stopped caring about the bruises and the sweat. It was worth it, just to be near him. Sometimes, when he showed me how to tighten a fence post or fix a loose hinge on the barn door, he'd stand so close behind me that I could feel the heat of his body against my back. His hand would brush mine, rough and calloused, steadying my grip. Every time it happened, a jolt of electricity shot up my spine, leaving me breathless and unsure. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Ryan was just being Ryan. Helpful. Friendly. He probably didn't even notice. But part of me, the part that lay awake every night, heart pounding in the quiet dark, started to wonder. One evening, after a long, grueling day hauling feed, Ryan suggested we cool off by the creek that ran along the edge of the property. "You'll like it," he said. "Best secret on this land." We walked down through the fields, the tall grass brushing against my jeans, the sky painted with the deep purples and oranges of twilight. Ryan led the way, whistling a soft tune under his breath. When we reached the creek, he stripped off his boots and socks without hesitation, rolling up the cuffs of his jeans. "You coming or what?" he called over his shoulder, already wading into the water. I hesitated, heart thudding. The way the fading light hit him, the curve of his back, the strength in his arms. It was too much and not enough all at once. Swallowing hard, I kicked off my boots and followed him in. The water was freezing, shocking against my skin, but it felt incredible after the heat of the day. I splashed in deeper, laughing as Ryan dunked his head and shook it like a wet dog, sending drops flying everywhere. We goofed around like kids, splashing and pushing each other, laughing until our sides hurt. At one point I slipped on a mossy rock and Ryan caught me by the arm, pulling me against him. For a second, just a second, we stood chest to chest in the rushing water, breathless and frozen. I looked up into his face, saw something flicker in his eyes. His hand tightened on my arm, and then, just as quickly, he let go, stepping back with a nervous laugh. "Careful," he said, voice a little rougher than usual. "Wouldn't want you to drown out here." I mumbled something stupid, my face burning hotter than the sun. The moment was over, gone, but it left something buzzing between us, something raw and real and terrifying. On the walk back to the farmhouse, we were quieter than usual. Ryan kept a few steps ahead of me, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his shoulders tense. I wanted to say something. I wanted to ask if he felt it too, whatever it was that had crackled between us by the creek. But fear locked my tongue. That night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling again, I replayed every second of that touch in my mind. The way his fingers had gripped my skin, the way his breathing had hitched for just a heartbeat. Was it wishful thinking? Was I making it all up? Or was there something real simmering just under the surface, something neither of us knew how to name yet? I rolled onto my side, clutching my pillow against my chest, feeling the ache of wanting something I was too scared to reach for. Tomorrow, I promised myself. Tomorrow, I'll find out. The next morning, I woke up determined. The air was thick with humidity, and the buzz of cicadas filled the fields, but none of it mattered. Today, I was going to stop second-guessing everything. I was going to figure out what was really happening between us. Ryan acted normal at breakfast, laughing, joking, teasing me about the sorry state of my boots, like nothing had happened by the creek. But I couldn't shake the memory of how it had felt when he caught me. How he had looked at me like I wasn't just some kid from the city anymore. I followed him out to the barn, nerves chewing at my insides. We spent the morning repairing the chicken coop. It was messy, hot work, and Ryan stripped off his shirt before long, tossing it aside without a second thought. I tried not to stare at the lean muscles of his back, the way his skin glistened with sweat. I failed miserably. "Earth to city, boy," Ryan said, snapping his fingers in front of my face. "You daydreaming about air conditioning again?" I laughed awkwardly, feeling my cheeks burn. "Yeah, something like that." He shook his head, smiling to himself as he bent to pick up a hammer. Later, while we broke for lunch under the shade of a huge oak tree, the mood shifted again. Ryan stretched out on the grass, arms folded behind his head, eyes closed against the sun. I sat nearby, picking at my sandwich, stealing glances at him when I thought he wouldn't notice. "You ever miss home?" he asked suddenly, without opening his eyes. I shrugged. "Sometimes, but it feels easier here. Simpler." He cracked one eye open, looking at me sideways. "Careful. You're starting to sound like a farm boy." I laughed, tossing a blade of grass at him. He caught it mid-air, twirling it between his fingers lazily. "You're different than I expected," he said after a moment, his voice low. "How's that?" I asked, my heart skipping. Ryan sat up, tossing the blade of grass aside. His expression was serious now, his eyes studying me like he was trying to solve a puzzle he didn't understand. "Most kids your age, they run from anything real," he said. "You don't." I didn't know what to say to that. My mouth went dry. Instead, I asked, "What about you? Ever think about leaving all this behind?" He smiled, a small, sad smile. "Thought about it once. But this land, it's part of me." We sat there in silence, the kind that felt heavy and full of things left unsaid. I wanted to close the distance between us. I wanted to touch him again, not by accident this time, but before I could move, he stood, brushing dirt off his jeans. "Come on," he said, his tone lighter. "Plenty of daylight left. Fence isn't going to fix itself." The moment shattered, slipping away like water through my fingers. Later that afternoon, while we wrestled with a stubborn section of wire fencing, it happened again, that accidental touch that wasn't so accidental. Ryan reached past me to grab a tool, and his hand brushed my waist. Not just a casual bump. His fingers lingered there for a second longer than necessary, warm and deliberate. I froze. He froze. For a split second, neither of us moved. The air between us thickened, electric. And then he pulled back sharply, tossing the tool into the bed of the truck with more force than needed. "We should get this done before dark," he said, not looking at me. I nodded mutely, my heart hammering against my ribs. Was it real? Was I crazy? or was he just as scared as I was? That night, lying in bed, staring at the cracked ceiling once more, I replayed every second of that touch in my mind until I couldn't tell where hope ended and desperation began. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't want more. I needed to know if he did too. The next morning, I woke to the sound of thunder rumbling low in the distance. A storm was coming. You could smell it in the air, thick and heavy like something about to break loose. Ryan was already outside when I made it to the porch, hammering away at a piece of tarp he was trying to fasten over the chicken coop. The sky behind him was a bruised gray, and the wind was picking up, tugging at the loose edges of his clothes. "You just gonna stand there, or are you gonna help?" he called, flashing me a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. I jogged over without thinking, grabbing the other end of the tarp. Together, we wrestled it down as the first fat drops of rain started to fall. The job was messy, chaotic, full of shouted instructions and slipping hands, but somehow we got it done, just as the sky opened up and unleashed a torrent. Soaked to the bone and laughing like lunatics, we sprinted for the barn. Inside, the air was warm and thick with the scent of hay and animals. Rain pounded the roof, a deafening drumbeat above our heads. Ryan yanked off his soaked t-shirt and wrung it out with a grin. I turned away quickly, pretending to focus on the storm outside, but my heart was beating so loudly it drowned out everything else. I heard him moving behind me, the soft shuffle of bare feet on wood. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded without turning around. "Yeah, just... storm caught me off guard." Silence stretched between us, longer than it should have. "That's not what I meant," he said quietly. I froze. Slowly, I turned to face him. Ryan was standing just a few feet away, shirtless, water dripping from his hair, his chest rising and falling a little too fast. His eyes searched mine, serious and unguarded in a way I had never seen before. "You've been looking at me different lately," he said, his voice low but steady. "I'm not stupid. I see it." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. "And I..." He hesitated, running a hand through his damp hair. "I don't know if I'm making it worse. I don't know if I'm leading you somewhere you don't want to go." The barn felt too small, too hot. I stepped closer without thinking, closing the space between us until I could feel the heat of his skin. "I'm not confused," I said, my voice barely more than a breath. "Not about you." He stared at me like he was waiting for me to take it back, to laugh it off, to make it easy for him to step away. But I didn't. I held his gaze, letting everything I felt show in my face, in my trembling hands. For a moment, it seemed like he might reach for me, like he might close that last inch between us. But then, just as quickly, he stepped back, his jaw tightening. "This isn't a good idea," he said, almost to himself. The words hit harder than they should have. I felt them like a slap across my chest. "Why?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. "Because you're 18, he said roughly. "Because I'm not. Because you have your whole damn life ahead of you, and the last thing you need is some washed-up farm boy screwing you up." "You're not screwing me up," I said, stepping forward again. "You're the only thing that's made sense all summer." The rain roared against the barn roof, drowning out the rest of the world. For a second, just 1 second, it felt like everything might tip over the edge. But Ryan shook his head, backing away like he was afraid of what would happen if he stayed. "I need to finish feeding the horses," he said stiffly, turning away. I stood there, heart broken open and raw, watching him walk away. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one raging inside me. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't leave things like this. Not after everything we'd shared, spoken and unspoken. Tomorrow, I decided. Tomorrow, I would find a way to break through his fear, or lose him forever. The storm passed by morning, leaving everything soaked and steaming under the rising sun. The fields glittered with dew and the air smelled fresh, like a second chance. I didn't sleep much. I kept replaying every word Ryan had said in the barn, every look, every breath between us. I kept thinking about how close we had been, and how quickly he had pulled away. But today, I wasn't going to let him run. Not without knowing the truth. I found him near the stables, repairing a broken gate. His back was to me, his muscles flexing with every swing of the hammer. I stood there for a moment, gathering courage, feeling like the ground under my boots might swallow me whole. Finally, I stepped forward. "Ryan." He looked over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. "Morning. We need to talk." He wiped his hands on his jeans and turned to face me fully, leaning back against the fence. "All right. Talk." I swallowed hard. "Last night, I know you felt it too." Ryan's jaw tightened, but he didn't say anything. "I'm not a kid," I continued. "I know what I want, and what I want is you." The words hung in the air between us, bold and terrifying. Ryan dropped his gaze to the ground, kicking at a loose rock with the toe of his boot. "It's not about what you want," he said after a long silence. "It's about what's fair." I shook my head. "You don't get to decide that for me." He looked up sharply, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. Not fear of me. Fear of hurting me. Fear of letting himself hope. "You're going to leave in a few weeks," he said, his voice rough. "Off to college, off to bigger things. And I'll still be here, shoveling dirt and fixing fences. So?" I stepped closer, my hands trembling. "Maybe I don't want bigger things. Maybe I just want this." His breath hitched, almost imperceptibly. "You're 18, he repeated, like a prayer he was trying to believe in. I reached out and took his hand. He didn't pull away. "You're the only person who's ever seen me," I said, my voice breaking. "Really seen me. Isn't that worth something?" Ryan closed his eyes, his shoulders sagging as if he carried the weight of the whole world. For a moment, everything stood still, the sun, the fields, the beating of my heart. And then he opened his eyes, looking at me like he was drowning. Slowly, carefully, he lifted my hand to his chest, pressing it over his heart. "You scare the hell out of me," he whispered. I smiled through the tears I hadn't realized were falling. "Good. You scare me too." And before I could second guess it, before I could lose the courage that had taken me all night to build, I leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't perfect. It was clumsy and desperate and trembling. But it was real. Ryan froze for a split second, his breath catching against my lips, and then he kissed me back. His hands found my waist, pulling me closer, and I felt him shudder against me, like he had been holding back for years. When we finally broke apart, gasping, he rested his forehead against mine. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into," he said, his voice shaking. I laughed, breathless. "Maybe not, but I know it's worth it." For the first time all summer, I saw him smile. Not the guarded, teasing grin he gave the world, but something softer, brighter. Something just for me. We stayed like that for a long time, holding on to each other while the world spun quietly around us. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over yet. The real challenge was still coming, because loving someone was easy. Fighting for them. That's where the real courage was needed. And I was ready to fight. The days that followed felt different. Everything was the same. the dusty fields, the heavy sun, but between us, something had shifted permanently. Ryan didn't pull away anymore. When we worked side by side, our arms brushed and he didn't flinch. At night, after chores were done, we would sit under the old oak tree, sharing quiet conversations, long glances, and eventually hesitant touches that grew bolder each evening. He still worried sometimes. I could see it in the way he hesitated before reaching for my hand, or the way he searched my face like he was looking for a sign that I would change my mind. But I never did. I knew exactly what I wanted now. I wanted him. His stubbornness, his kindness, his rough laugh that always came when he thought no one was listening. Summer slid toward its end faster than I was ready for. My last night on the farm came sooner than I wanted. We didn't talk about goodbyes. We just sat by the creek where it had all started, his arm draped over my shoulder, my head resting against him, listening to the crickets and the soft rush of water. "I'll come back," I said into the dark, meaning it more than I had ever meant anything. Ryan kissed the top of my head. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. I already knew. This wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of everything that mattered. If this story touched your heart, ask yourself, how often do we let fear stop us from chasing the people who make us feel alive? Maybe it's time to be a little braver. Maybe it's time to trust that real love is worth the risk. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this story with someone who still believes that love can be found where you least expect it.